I would rather see a company that's messy, that's generating growth and results for clients. I'd rather see that than a company that's perfectly organized and they're not doing anything innovative and they're not generating much growth.
Absolutely.
Those are the companies that will die.
What's going on, everybody? We are here with Mandy Ellison from Hands Off CEO at handsoffceo.com. And if you've been a subscriber of the channel, you've probably seen us chat before. But Mandy is going to drop some bombs on us today, specifically around onboarding your operations manager or director or operations person to have your business kind of running a lot more smoothly and doing it all in just 90 days. So Mandy, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely, Greg. Thank you so much for having me.
So if you're new to the channel, folks, we've spoken before. Mandy works with agency owners, consultants that are typically over $1 million. You can kind of dive a little bit deeper on that real fast. But we always jam on like productizing and streamlining where the business can run more smoothly without you. So we obviously have a lot of things that we agree on and always like to jam on. But a key piece of that is obviously getting yourself out of the day-to-day operations. So Mandy, I know you're going to kind of break down how to do this, but a quick, like who you are, what type of agencies you help, just for the people that might be tuning in to you for the first time here.
Sure, absolutely. And maybe I'll also try to distinguish the work that we do, how it's a little different.
Yeah.
Because this is a question I get a lot of times, actually. People reach out and be like, which one should I do? I'm considering this. And I'm like, you know what? You should work with Greg based on what you're doing. Or I would say, well, you know what? Greg would probably tell you to work with us based on this. And we have those conversations. I know we've talked about that before, Greg. And, I really respect the work that you do around productizing services for agencies. And I know a lot of your agencies that you guys, and they're running into that capacity issue. And one of the areas where I feel like you guys really shine is around training. It's around putting together offerings around leveraging training, leveraging the IP, and taking what you have and putting it into IP that you can train. And I think that's a really great model. And there is some overlap into what we do on that too, because we help our clients be able to leverage their best practices, put it together into what we call an irresistible offer so that they can charge a lot more, so that they can have the cash flow, the profitability to be able to scale. But one of the key differences that with the agencies we work with is that a lot of their services are very bespoke. So they have just really exceptional results, very top in their industry. Sometimes they may be charging, up to $10,000, $20,000 a month plus. Some of them even have like an outlier client where they could be pushing up to $1 million. And that doesn't always work with that model. So one of the things that we're really good at is how do you be able to create a productized offer that is about 80, 90% productized, but at the same time does not lose that positioning in the industry. And it allows you to be able to scale, six-figure, multiple six-figure, seven-figure type of services.
For sure.
And I think Greg, do you feel like that's a good place for us to show how the differentiation there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why kind of this topic to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think is really interesting, because the big challenge that a lot of people have, whether they're below $1 million or over $1 million, is when the services are custom enough, and or obviously when it's custom for each and every client, that's a disaster. But when there's enough custom needs for the clients you serve, the thing that kind of strangles people is like the operational drag. And that's kind of what holds people back. And so you can have a productized service, a service that is packaged as a specific outcome. You follow repeatable steps, but there's still a lot of nuance, I imagine, that your clients are dealing with, where profit margins and success and efficiency all really come down to how well does the team move a client from start to finish, day-to-day operations of that. And that's where this person comes in, because it can be obviously very unprofitable if you don't have a repeatable operating procedure, if you will, for kind of getting that work done. So 100% agree on that. And I think the beauty for a lot of people that we serve is, for whatever reason, maybe they came from a larger agency, or for whatever reason, they just know they don't want a ton of operational complexity. And so they want as few team members as possible. They want as few clients as possible, which is where all of the training and the IP stuff really becomes appealing to them, because it's sort of where service meets, and I really don't like this term, but I'm using it, the creator economy. It's kind of the blending of those where our people really like to shine. And so obviously there's people that are building, multi seven-figure and beyond agencies. And that's the type of people that you're pretty much dealing with. So
yeah.
Operations.
And you have a phenomenal model for that. Yeah. So, and you know what, and here's the thing is that, and you touched on this, to be able to have smooth running operations, you need to have a single point of focus where, like, what are we actually delivering? Who are we delivering it for? Because if you're everything to everybody, or if you have 10 different types of clients doing 5 different types of services for them, it's just all over the place. That's very hard to get the market positioning to be able to charge the high prices, to be able to actually have the profit margins to hire really good people to be able to build this all out for you. This is not something you should be building yourself. This is something your team should be building for you. So we're going to talk about how to be able to bridge that gap today. But you need to know what you're selling. You need to know what transformation you're providing for your client. It's not just about like turn the crank. Oh yeah, we do the best SEO service. It's like, well, you can productize that, but no one's going to buy it if there's not like a clear value and result that comes out of that. And I think that we're seeing in the market right now a real move in this direction where the companies that are actually providing certainty for their clients and their prospects are winning. And then everyone else is starting to really struggle. And I don't know if you've seen that, but that's a lot of the conversations that we've had outside of our tribe. Like, that's what I'm hearing a lot of it. They're starting to wake up and wanting to change that, though.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that I don't know if your clients experience this, but like one obstacle that I see when people come in to start productizing is because they're coming from, I used to just do everything, they get really hung up on all of the logistics of what they deliver and how that the promise and that transformation is lost. And they almost make it more difficult for them to sell because they're trying to sell all of the work and all of the actual activities versus the outcome of those activities. And I think that's where they kind of run into that, which again, back to like, you can have a productized service, you can have an overarching promise and outcome that you're getting people. There can still be room for custom things, but even for that to be successful and scalable to 7 figures beyond, it does come down to how efficient are you, which is where the operations person comes in. And I know even in our business, I think any business having someone that kind of like spearheads operations, because the founder in most cases is not always the best operator. I think there's some rare exceptions to that rule, but the founder is probably best doing other things. And then that ops person really drives a lot of that stuff through. So I know our clients and the people watching this would love to have someone helping the business run more smoothly without them. And they might be overwhelmed with, where do I get this person? The thought of even having this person onboarded in 90 days is probably baffling. So how do we do it?
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about it. And I'm glad we are able to talk about the key foundation of this, because the selling is what moves into the delivering. Now you know what you're selling. That is a really good time to be able to have the operations manager come on. We should like, you talk about where to find them and all that. That depends a lot on your kind of business. There's some industries where maybe you're working with government, for example, and you have to have someone located in the United States. So where you're going to be looking for them, a lot of the different normal job boards that you'll be able to find them on that, right? But so the key is going to be that you have a job ad that's really compelling, that helps them be able to see that their place at the company. And you need to really be calling out someone who is willing to roll up their sleeves and who's not too senior. You go out and say, we know I'm going to hire a COO for your tiny, like, $1-2 million company, or smaller even than that. What will happen is you have someone who tends to be overtitled. They're trying to make change without the resources that they were used to in other environments they were at. And it just doesn't work very well. So what we find works the best is to find a really good operations manager. You really want to find that role, or like when it starts to be able to slow down the growth of the company. If you're starting to see, like, I can't focus on sales, we're running into these issues with me continuing to be stuck in the day-to-day with clients, that might be a time to consider that. So another option to look at too is maybe an account manager is the next hire instead of an operations manager. Now, here's my thinking on this, and then what we've experienced with this. If you have really good systems already in place, hire the account manager. That's great, because they can plug into that. But a lot of times you don't have all those systems in place for the account managers to actually be even successful. So what you can do is you can hire an operations manager who is going to be kind of your catch-all. And this could slow them down with implementing everything else. But if it's exactly what the business needs right now, that's perfect. And they can help put in place all the account management structures. And that's actually what we did a couple of years ago in our company as we were up-leveling some systems. What happens is as you grow, your systems break. You need new systems for, that this is just what naturally happens. So if you think, I just need to build more systems, then I'll get to this point. Well, guess what? It's never over. You're always going to be building out systems. And that's why you need to be training your team on being the ones setting up their own systems for their roles. So where are we at on this, Greg? I know I just spit out a whole lot.
Yeah, no, I actually appreciate the distinction kind of between account manager and operations person. Right before you even said that, I was going to potentially be asking you that because when you mentioned kind of getting out of, feeling the pain of, well, okay, now I'm not able to spend as much time in sales, which I need to be as the founder. But I know sometimes a lot of people can't spend time in sales because of delivery. And so maybe you can hit on, and I know account manager kind of to me ties a little bit more to maybe being involved in that delivery, maybe the onboarding of a client, which I know can really relieve the founder and or some level of support. But let's just for the sake of the ongoing example that you have delivery enough in check where we're now focused on this ops person. From there, getting to someone like that who is at this stage, arguably, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of maybe your eventual first leadership position might be for many people. This is kind of a big person coming into your business that it's not just you anymore, which is going to be great and also stressful. So getting that type of person up and running, where do we start so that we can kind of be in a good spot 90 days from now?
I'll talk about the 3 top projects that implementing over the first 90 days, it's going to do a few things for you. First of all, it's going to test if this person needs even the right fit for this role. And you'll find out pretty quickly when you put a training and development plan for them, and this is something that we do with our clients, there's a 90-day ramp-up onboarding plan where there's a checklist for what they need to be doing week by week to be able to fully onboard themselves and to be able to actually run the day-to-day of the company. And it actually is possible to get it in 90 days if they have the right support. And no matter what level you're bringing on your operations leader, unless you're bringing on this massive multiple 6-figure, amazing COO that's coming in that is basically as a consultant on their own, right? If you're bringing somebody in like that, they probably don't need a lot of development, but why are they going to work for your company? They won't. The thing is, your company is not large enough to be able to attract in the level of person who can just magically do it all on your. They need support. Yeah. You need to have someone who is hardwired to think this way, though. So, and these are the 3 things. First of all, I would do this in the interviewing process. I'd be asking, or I'd be sharing, these are the challenges that we have in our company right now. How would you go about solving these? And actually have that be one of the tasks that you do, because you'll find out really quick, whether they actually can walk the talk or whether they're just blowing smoke. And here's something else too about operators. They're not natural salespeople. Your worst candidate might be the one who's actually the shiny penny. The exercises are really important. And I've experienced that when hiring this role before. The very best ones were the ones that did not stand out until you actually saw their work. And then it was at a whole different level.
Question on that. You mentioned obviously a lot of this stuff happened. You start vetting for this in the interview. You're bringing your challenges. How would you do this? And kind of the frame around getting this person up and running in 90 days. What's your stance on is the 90 days kind of a test trial project? They kind of have a 90 days to kind of see how we're doing? Or is this someone that you think, do you frame it as a 90-day project trial? And if it's going well, we continue into kind of a full-time thing? Or how do you structure that?
Well, first of all, this needs to be a full-time role right away.
Oh, for sure. But do you frame it as hey, you're in and you're just good? Or because every time I hire someone, I always set up hey, we're going to work together for a window of time, whatever, if it's part-time or full-time, and make sure it's a good fit before we make it super official.
I agree with you on the side that I look at it a 90-day trial period. I wouldn't even say a trial period. I proceed as if they are full on our team, but we have a very rigorous hiring process. And also during this 90-day ramp-up plan, you have a week-by-week meeting. So if you're not willing to meet with your operations manager on a weekly basis, at least to be supporting them, don't hire them. Just continue drowning. But you got to be able to support that. And it's one thing that we tell our clients too, is if their operations leader may be struggling a little bit because you're not giving them enough information that they need. The advantage when we're working with them, because they have such a clear direction, they know exactly what they need to be pulling out of the CEO, so it saves some time there. But you need to actually be supporting them all the way through this. And you need to have milestones that like every week is basically a milestone. So you just pull up the plan and say, how are we doing on this? And that's how you can manage what you expect with them. And then it will also help you be able to find bad habits. A really common one is just like, there's a speed of the CEO and there's the speed of where operators are usually more comfortable going. At our company, we move a little faster. So one of the pieces in the testing period is like, can you keep up with the pace that we have? And like, are you going to be able to learn how to like make decisions and move forward without all the information? Or are you going to wait? And so when you catch things like that, then you can solve them very quickly. And then you also know whether you can solve them or not. So if that comes up in like the week 3 and you know that that's a failure point just from interviewing them, then that would be the point where you would let them go. If you can see that a deal breaker has happened, and you don't need to keep them on for 3 months. You don't need to keep them on for 10 months. Like what we see a lot of people like, oh, this isn't working. I don't know. I'm going to keep working on this person. Fire them and move on.
So you kind of started kind of teasing like there's like 3 projects that they're doing kind of out of the gate. So as you're going through these 3 projects, you for sure need to be meeting weekly, having some milestones that you're kind of checking against to make sure that they can keep up. What do you typically see as the first few projects that people should be delegating and getting this person doing?
So as we were talking about, account management may be one of the projects, and that's a pretty big one. So you may be putting in place account management systems to be removing the CEO out of the day-to-day business. And so you may already have that in place. If it's not a huge pain point, then that might not be the first project in the first 90 days. That's kind of on a case-by-case basis, that one. But it's usually a pretty important one. If you're hiring your first operations manager, and we talked about this before, there's lots of different titles for an operations manager. It could be director of operations. Some people overtitle and call a COO. You could have a project manager that you're kind of moving into more of an operations manager role. What you're essentially doing is you're moving from kind of everything, you being the monkey in the middle, and you're like pushing everything out to everybody, and it just being like a level of organized chaos. Hopefully it's not that big of a case, but I think it's fair to say that most companies, they're under, a couple million, even if there's a lot of chaotic pieces if they're growing. What I think I've noticed is the companies that are really well organized oftentimes are not growing very quickly. They put all their time and energy to be perfecting these systems and everything. And you know what, that's great and all that you have all that worked out. But if you're not growing the company, you can put yourself at huge risk, because those same companies are the ones that may lose 3 clients in a month and they're really hooped. If they're 3 bigger clients, or you know what I mean? That's
for sure.
So that's some of the things I would rather see a company that's messy, that's generating growth and results for clients. I'd rather see that than a company that's perfectly organized and they're not doing anything innovative and they're not generating much growth.
Absolutely.
Those are the companies that will die.
Absolutely. I love that you called that out though, because like, I think, and maybe because we talk a lot about systems, and I think systems come up when you talk about productization a lot. I think people, especially early, try to have everything perfectly smooth when it's like, it doesn't actually need to be that smooth that early. Like it's because it's going to break anyway. And I think it does hold back growth in many stages. So I do think calling that out is good. So account management, that's like one top potential thing, which makes complete sense. Like what would be another one?
Yeah. Putting in place the planning rhythms and that are managed on a weekly basis. So oftentimes without this key managerial function in place, they don't have regular weekly meetings that like for the team full meeting where you're going over your key strategic objectives for the quarter. Oftentimes they don't have the key strategic objectives for the quarter. Maybe they have an annual plan, but there's no actual quarterly plan and milestones to work towards that. So you really have to build those things out in the company. And that takes time, that takes energy. And the thing is that business owners listening to this right now, they know they need to be doing this. But the problem is you also know you need to be making sales. You know, you need to be keeping clients happy. You need to be making payroll and being able to deal with your taxes. You need to do all these different things. So the planning oftentimes gets swept under the rug. Like I've been so guilty of this, right? Yeah. I've had to pay someone to hold me accountable for this, or our team to this.
So like to kind of drill in on like what does planning mean? Like, can you give us an example? Because like in my mind, I have like 3 or 4 things that I'm thinking about, but like, what do you see as if this function isn't happening? So we have account management, the planning rhythm. What sort of things are not being planned that actually are creating a problem to get them to the next level?
Yeah, how to actually execute on the growth strategy, how to actually execute on the goals. Everyone should have a growth plan where they're looking at for this next year, this is what we're creating, and you have initiatives. And I think that EOS does a great job at this. There's probably a number of people listening to this who have done EOS or some kind of process. You read the book and you're looking at putting in place these different pieces. I think that's a little overkill myself. I think that for smaller companies, especially, it's very overkill. But you need to be looking at what is it going to take us to be able to reach these 3-year goal, or a 5-year goal, whichever timeline you're looking at. What is our core values that we make decisions based upon? You don't have core values you make decisions based upon. Guess who keeps on having to be the one to judge whether something is on track or not? Like the owner of the business does. So that's why one of the reasons why you get pulled in is people don't have a good criteria for making decisions. And be looking at, well, what are the strategic objectives that need to happen this quarter to be able to reach our goals for the next 12 months? So then what this looks like on our team is that we have the different strategic objectives that are important for us to accomplish our goals over the next year, this for our specific quarter. And as we're going through our planning, we will volunteer, say, we'll take that one on, I'll take that one on, we'll take that one on. And you go through this process of saying, how did last quarter go? What did we learn from that? Where are we not sticking to our values? And it's really an opportunity. Like we're talking into the planning process right now, but it's a crucial structure to have into the company because it brings in a level of integrity and workability into the company when you're essentially making promises that we're going to accomplish this thing in the next 90 days. Without that, then you can't really drive towards growth. It's just chaotic running around, going after the most urgent thing. So, and within the 90 days, you break that down into milestones for, 30-day milestones to be able to get, if we want to go on more of a granular level, but that's a structure that your operations manager needs to put into place. They need to be putting in place team scorecards, right, for their roles. Not just like a job description, but like their scorecards and putting in place just something as simple as the timeline for when they're doing performance reviews and all that. So, because otherwise they don't happen. And then the company doesn't actually get managed, just keeps on rolling forward. And then at the end of the year, you don't accomplish what you were looking for, what you were seeking out to. And then it's kind of disappointing. I think maybe as we're nearing towards fourth quarter, I imagine there's a number of agencies that are feeling that way right now.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of that's because they didn't have the planning rhythms and structure in place to be able to manage to the outcomes that they wanted to create internally for their business.
Absolutely. I was just telling some of our clients this morning, with the holidays and weekends, this was the other day, I feel like there's 55 working days left in the year. Whoa, that's you don't think about it like that when it's just October, but with holidays and all that stuff, you got less than 2 months of actual doing stuff that you're going to be able to get stuff done. So what I see, and tell me if I'm missing the mark on this, I was going to ask what's kind of the pitfall from not having kind of this planning rhythm in place. And it sounds like many agencies are obviously prone to jumping to, I got to solve this, I got to solve that. Oh my God, this happened, I got to go do this. And when you operate that way, you sometimes even when you have a plan, you lose sight of, oh man, that's actually different than the 2 to 3 things that we said we needed to drive forward this quarter. But I totally took my attention off the ball and now I've been over here for 30 days. Is that kind of where you see not having a planning rhythm kind of take people?
The first place to start is just to get your weekly meetings in place and managing against that. But without the planning rhythms in place, what ends up happening is that, you're all over the place. And you can solve that by having a weekly meeting where you're going over the strategic objectives. Are you on track? Yes or no? And you're also talking about client health. That's another initiative that is connected to the scoring. When I was talking about account management, that's really what I was talking about with putting in place client health scoring. So, we use a color tracking, red, yellow, green, and proactively tracking your client health. And if I would recommend for folks listening to this, it's really tempting to try to implement something completely on your own from a book that you got and do everything perfectly. And it's a great way to just set yourself up for failure. So the best thing that you can do is just start right now where you're at. and just start having the weekly meeting where you're discussing client health. You put it on a spreadsheet, track it, or do it in your project management systems even better.
Does the client health in that meeting, is that a part of the planning, or are we moving into a third thing?
What I was talking about with the planning rhythms is the planning rhythms gives you the structure for you actually run the day-to-day. It's the structure for it. Part of that structure is the weekly meeting. So that weekly meeting is reviewing your quarterly objectives. It's reviewing the client health. It is reviewing your the overall scorecard for your entire business, like all on one page where you're reporting on that. And we have a color-coded one there as well. We have goals and we have color-coded ones for ours. And so really what it is the planning is setting the plan. And then the weekly meeting is actually just managing through that plan and getting everybody on board on your team. And then it's also an opportunity to solve challenges together and to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and also some team building too. I mean, you don't want to just make this be a playtime, but these type of structures tend to really strengthen the culture in the agencies we found.
For sure.
It's definitely with our company.
Yeah. I mean, we have similar like meeting rhythms internally. And then we also kind of teach some of our clients to have like how to operate that way. And just the byproduct of that is you as the founder typically, and this is speaking for myself and the people that I've interacted with, like there's a lot less context switching. You are finding that you're able to get more done in the time that you already had versus like you find yourself saying less, what the hell just happened this week? Where'd the week go? Like you're actually seeing things start to move forward. So account management, planning rhythm, what would be the third thing that we should focus on?
Yeah, I'll say the account management and client scoring, the planning rhythms. And then the third thing is standardizing project management and communication protocols. So, you were mentioning about the context switching, working over each other. It's really important to have a way that you're organizing the work. And every agency needs to have a project management system. Every now and then we'll find an agency that doesn't have anything in place. And they're usually more like the brick and mortar companies where they have like a wall on the board or something. And those have been more in the consulting side of things. But your operations manager needs to put in place a project management system. So that's going to be one of the key roles. And everything that I've already talked about is built into the project management system, like everything we've already talked about today. And it is establishing the communication protocols. Like, how do you best communicate among your team? Like, where do you communicate about what types of things? How do you stay out of email? Because that's very inefficient to be communicating back and forth over email. And if needed to select a new project management system, very likely the one that you have is fine. It's just you need to better utilize it.
What do you see with, I feel like there's always like a common conversation around, oh, my clients don't like going into the project management tool, like where client interaction meets your project management tool. Like, are clients in there? Are they not?
Right. That's a great question. And I think that's going to be different for every company and how they want to operate and also how easy it is. I mean, for example, Basecamp, I know you can go right from the email and just respond to an email and it's like seamless for the client. And there's a number of project management systems like that. That part is going to be based upon what the preference really is. I can't give a hard and fast rule on that. But the project management system, first and foremost, is going to be very important. When I was talking about the emails back and forth, I was mostly talking about within internal emails. Internal communication needs to be other than email. Now, having communication back and forth with clients, it's a judgment call on how you want to do that. We use Slack for that for hours. And one of the reasons why is like a lot of our clients are agencies and they're already on Slack, so it works, right? So you just have to think about that. But let's take out the planning rhythms. And maybe you just got in place the weekly meeting and the client scoring. Maybe that with all the other things that they're focused on is all they can do. If they could do those things, plus get the project management system in place, those three things in 90 days, if you have an operations manager who does that, they will be amazing. And what I've also just laid out here, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. I was about to ask you, it's like, okay, so there's account management, planning rhythm, and project management, and basically comms. Would each of those be a month? But then you kind of said, well, it's not like they have to do everything in planning rhythms, but if they could get to at least, the weekly meeting, and I believe you said the scorecard, and then getting the project management thing standardized, like even getting that in 90 days would be like, I know for the founder would be probably like life-changing.
Getting something, just getting that started in place. Exactly. So it's not going to be like month 1, month 2, month 3. It doesn't work that way because there's contingencies throughout the whole thing. And I showed this 90-day plan to my operations manager when I was hiring him. And I said, this is what we need to have accomplished in the next 90 days. I said, well, what will you start with first? And he's like, well, actually all of these are contingent, so they have to all be done at the same time. And I'm like, you get it. Mm-hmm. You get it.
Yeah. So what are the common ways that you've seen that the founder has effed up allowing this person to do this so that it doesn't take 90 days or that it fails? Like, what can the founder do to make sure that they're letting this person win and that can actually achieve these things?
First of all, hiring the wrong person. So someone who doesn't have the wiring for this. Second of all, not setting really clear expectations and having this 90-day roadmap planned out week by week. You lay it out and you give it to them and say, hey, break this down week by week. That would be a good place to start. We do that with our clients to help them break it down because it saves a lot of time, but every company is going to be different and this 90-day plan will be different for every company. So they need to take some ownership of that. And how the owner might mess up this is if they get really busy and they don't set aside, at least an hour a week to be supporting their operations manager through this. I'd encourage daily check-ins. Like anytime I'm hiring someone new and they're a direct report of mine, they are doing a daily check-in with me at the least, right? So that we can get them on the right track. So what you really want to do is catch the less desirable behaviors before they end up happening. So abdicating is something that they could really fail with. And just allowing someone who's a bit of a deadbeat just to stay on and just stay in perpetual learning mode. I need to go and learn. I need to shadow. No. If they're shadowing, the shadowing is for them to actually implement something. Because if you're training your team to come in and just shadow instead of actually getting work done, you're missing the biggest golden moment where they're so excited to come in and prove themselves. Use that to set the stage for the rest of their performance forever in the company.
Yeah, I love it. Anything else that we didn't cover that would be applicable to making sure that this gets done in the first 90 days? I mean, we kind of laid it all out, laid out the pitfalls. Any final words on that?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that their job is to enable growth and letting them know that right from the start. Letting them know that your job is to drive growth. Their job is to enable growth and to set a pace for what is expected and hire someone based upon what is going to work for you, for your pace. Because that's a big area that we've seen issues in the past.
Like the operations person can move faster than the founder or vice versa?
Oh, no. It's usually someone that's hardwired for operations can be a slower moving kind of person. So you can have this tension between the CEO who's constantly changing their mind and having different things, right? Wanting to do every day. And then the operations leader who's like the slow and steady one. And you need that balance. You also need to have someone that you respect enough that's the right person in this role is going to be able to take a stand and say, no, like my operations manager, he's like, no, you can't do that. But we keep changing these things. We can't do that. And I need someone who does that. And I respect him. So you're right. Or I have to convince him for why this is the right thing to do. Or within the team structure, right? And when you build up leaders around you like this, it allows you to be able to drive the growth of the company because you're not the only one doing it. And you don't need to have an equity partner to be able to do this in your company. You just need really good leaders. And, something else I'll add too, we talked about where to hire them. One of our favorite places to hire them is from Eastern Europe. You can find phenomenal people there for about half the price as a US-based person. So this is especially valuable for companies that who could only afford an executive assistant or a really good executive assistant. I don't like low-end executive. I only like really good ones that are almost like a project manager level. If you can hire someone like that in the States, you can take that same budget and find a really good ops manager in Eastern Europe. If you have a good hiring process, that's a whole other topic for another day, but you just can get a lot more for your budget and then it enables you to grow faster.
For sure. So my last question, just because you said that, then I guess, and obviously this is an opinion, but what is your opinion and stance on the current nature of work, especially for agencies and consultancies, remote? Should you have people in the same office? You probably see a mix. What are you seeing and recommending these days?
Right. I definitely see a mix. And what I see is a workforce that is increasingly just begging to be able to have flexibility and work from home. They're begging for it, right? And I'm seeing an opportunity where you have access to talent that maybe would go and work for these large corporations for more than you might be able to pay them with bigger benefits than you could possibly match. Like, you know, we're not going to ever be able to come close to what Google can offer. But what I have seen, you know, and one of our clients, Jasmine Martell, was sharing about this because they were actually competing with Google for top talent. Hey, how do you scale a company when you have to have team members that are multiple six-figure? It is really a challenge for them. And what they have found is being remote and having the culture and really building that culture, being very intentional about it, especially as a remote company, they've been able to get vastly better talent. And they want to work for them because of the remote nature of the company. I'm all for remote. I was big on remote before it was cool. Yeah. Back when I pretended that my home address was actually an office. You know, you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like when I had an agency back in like, it was like 16 years ago, right? But that's my position on it. But I do have clients that have very large locations too, and that works for them. So it's just whatever is going to be a fit.
I love it.
Or a blended.
Well, you guys heard it. Account management, planning rhythm, project management, and comms. Those are the kind of the first 4 or 3 things that you should have your operations person focus on. I know you've been on the channel before, but a great book. I don't know if you noticed on my shelf back here, your little gift.
Oh,
do you see that?
I actually can't see it because it's a little blurry. I wish I could see it.
The sand time thing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Is back on my shelf.
Glad.
So
I'm so glad.
Yeah. So check out Mandy's book, Hands Off CEO. We'll link everything up to her. Where can people find you and connect more with you?
Yeah. And let me show you where, like, you can go on Amazon and you can buy our book. We have an Audible and digital and all that, and print it if you want. But if you would like to get a copy of the audio version, the digital version, and what is your worth business, what is your business worth scorecard, and we have all sorts of goodies. For $5, you can go and go to handsoffceo.com/book, and you can get all of that, the audio version and digital file, all of those things right there, handsoffceo.com/book. And that's probably one of the best ways just to get into our orbit. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you might want to just go into the section to be able to see how you spell my name. It's a bit of a mouthful.
We'll link it all up in the description below. Mandy, thanks so much for joining us again. Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Greg, for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.